Attention, please. Eastern Airlines Flight 19, now ready for departure.
Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering the vacation kingdom of the world.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. We call it Epcot. Will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, taking you back to the vacation kingdom of the world, the way it was, and the way it is in your memories.
Okay, welcome to episode 11 of the Retro Disney World Podcast. This episode is titled First Things First. I'm your host, Todd McCartney, and sitting with me tonight this month, as always, is Hal Bowers.
Aloha.
Welcome, Hal. Brian P. Miles.
Greetings from the city of brotherly love, host to Pope Francis next week.
That's right, he's coming down.
Wow.
And JT Kujar. How are you doing tonight, JT?
Good to be here.
Excellent. So tonight we're going to be taking you back to multiple things that happened first at Walt Disney World. We're going to speak with George and Becky Miranda shortly, who were there on opening day. And we're going to go into some other things that happened for the first time at Disney World, including the very first airport was there. We're going to talk about some of the first families at the different theme parks and get into a couple other firsts as well. So before we get into that, we wanted to go back. I think, Hal, you had something you wanted to go over from last month, correct?
Well, it's a couple of months ago, actually. It's one real quick correction. When we were doing one of our Epcot episodes, we were talking about the 1974 placement of World Showcase. So before Marty went and put the two models together with John Hench, World Showcase was kind of its own freestanding thing. Mm-hmm. And from the models and things that I had seen from that time period, it looked to me as if it was to the east of the Ticketed Transportation Center where it was going to be located. But over the weekend when I was doing some more research, I ran into a much better architectural rendering. And it turns out they were actually going to build it in the Magic Kingdom parking lot right in front of the Ticketed Transportation Center. So they would have just leveled that space and used that to build World Showcase, and then presumably built a different parking lot someplace else. And there's a rendering that shows a monorail going to a station there, and then continuing into the spur line, and then to the hotels and over to the Magic Kingdom. So, believe it or not,
maybe they would have put that parking lot right next to where they built the new World Showcase, so that they could have the original idea, so that you exit through a gift shop.
That's right.
Possibly.
Can you imagine food and wine at the Ticket and Transportation Center, right?
Oh, yes.
Going around there. All right, sounds good. So we're going to get right into our special guests here. Let's give them a call.
Hello.
Hi, George.
Yes,
Hi, George. This is Todd McCartney in the Retro Disney World Podcast. How are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty good.
Excellent. Hi, Becky.
Hi.
How are you tonight?
Oh, pretty good.
Thank you very much for joining. On the phone with us is George and Becky Miranda, and we got to know George and Becky through a recent post that George had put up on some additional websites outlining some photos that he took at the Magic Kingdom a number of years ago. Now, what piqued our interest is that George annotated that the actual photos were taken on the very first day that the Magic Kingdom was open. And we noticed that in there, as we're going to talk about a little later, that the crowds were kind of low, didn't look very busy. And George's pictures basically went viral very quickly. And I know, George, we'll talk about a little later too, as well. You've been working on having your son restore those. But I sent a message to George and I said, you know what, we just completed an episode on the first day over at the Disney MGM Studios where Hal was there on the first day. And we had all these other first things we wanted to discuss. And I said, this is a perfect opportunity to bring somebody on. And we've never spoken to anybody before who has been there at the Magic Kingdom on opening day. So George and Becky, welcome to the show. Really appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So maybe you could give us a little background of, how did you decide to go there? Was it part of your original honeymoon plans? And how that day unfolded? We'd love to hear the different things that went on, and what it really was like to be there on the very first day.
Well, I'll start off because I really was asked that question on the one of the Facebook websites where people want to know, did I plan this in advance? Basically, I said, living in Ohio, our local media did not promote Disney World all that much. Every once in a while, you may hear something about, another park opening on the East Coast, possibly Florida. But once we got married and we planned on going to Daytona Beach. Once we were there, we watched the television news, mainly out of Orlando, and they kept promoting the fact that Disney World was going to open. And we said, okay, now we know what we're doing. We're going.
So you arrived in Florida just a couple days before then, it sounds like.
That's correct. We were married on the 25th of September, and we got down there to the Florida about, a couple days later.
Wow.
And we, just hung out on the beach and did basically tourist-type things.
Not to be insensitive, but could you share like roughly how old you were at the time? Were you guys in your 20s? Were you like newlyweds or?
He was 23 and I was 18.
Okay.
Nice. Very good.
Just silly kids.
Well, then you were perfect. That's, I think, the thing.
And I think the amazing thing is that we could be uncovering the very first couple. Not only were you there first day, but it could have been the very first honeymoon at Walt Disney World. So you had decided then to do a day trip over, and did you decide to definitely do it on day one? Was that part of your plans, or just how it planned out?
No, we decided to attempt it on opening day, although the news media was expecting backup traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Almost back to Daytona Beach. We thought we'd give it a try.
And north into Georgia. And that's amazing. Anything I've read about, the opening day experience and all of that, all I read was, I think they said that the state police and the governor, they were a little concerned. The attendance numbers kept growing and growing in the media, but I haven't seen much about it ever since. And they actually had television news that showed either state troopers or National Guard troopers on the highways stationed near the overpasses. They actually had, and on our way there, we saw small single-engine aircraft in the median on the highway, helicopters. They had a special sign that was loaded with all these like little silver discs, and it said, if you're in distress, flash your bright lights and somebody would come help you. But there was, once we got on the road, we're like, oh my goodness, is it really open or what? Because there was no traffic.
So there was nothing, and that's really interesting. So you came down I-4, and
Mm-hmm.
so no traffic on I-4. And what about actually turning on to Disney property? Was any pomp and circumstance down there at the exit, or just...
It was a little confusing. We went to there was a sign that said, like Walt Disney World. I can't remember the exact terminology. It was like this exit. So we took that exit, and we drove for quite a bit, and we saw no other signs. And we came across a building that in years since then, I think that may have been one of their administrative buildings, one of their first. It looked to me almost similar to the building we checked in at the Vacation Villas one year, and we had to check in at this little building that was out sort of in the wilderness.
That sounds like you're talking about the preview center that they then used to check people in for the villas in subsequent
years. Yeah, I think so. And we stopped by because there wasn't any other buildings or anything around, and I stopped by and I said, I'm not the usual male. I don't have a problem with asking for directions if I really want to find something. No problem there. And so we stopped, and there were some people there that had the little Disney name tags. And with that, they gave us directions to the park. And we said, "Is it open?" And they said, "Oh yeah." You know, and it was like, "Oh yeah, no, we didn't close it. We're opening." They gave me directions to the parking lot, and I don't know, about 15 minutes later or so, we were in the parking lot, paid our 50 cents to park.
Ooh,
That's awesome.
Yeah, wasn't that nice? And we got a tram from the parking lot. I think one of my photos shows that I think there was like one other couple on the tram besides the two of us.
Now, George, I got to stop you there when it comes to the tram. There's been some discussion that the very first trams at Disney World were pulled by these converted trucks, if you will. They were white, I believe, in nature, and they didn't have enough pulling power. Do you recall what was heading up the tram that pulled you that day?
I don't know. I don't think the picture shows.
I don't think it shows
the front end. It just shows us sitting in a seat and taking a shot toward the front. And the tram itself was white with orange seats. It was very new and shiny, but maybe it would have had trouble pulling the people if there were more on it. But with just 4 people, there was no trouble getting this up at Ticket Transportation.
Now, what time was this? Do you recall?
We actually got into the park, I think it was like about 10:30. We overslept in Daytona, you know.
That's what everybody does in Daytona.
Got on the road late, and but we actually made it through and actually went through the portals somewhere about 10:30.
And the monorail over too. Now, there's also been discussion that, and I believe you had a photo that actually showed that the Contemporary wasn't completed at that time too. That as you went through it, there was some cranes hanging out through it. Do you recall any of that?
Yeah, I sure do. Actually, through this whole procedure of posting pictures and communications, I actually got on a Facebook website that has people who were cast members at Disney in the 70s. And I actually had a communication with a gentleman named Ted, who was actually a pilot of the monorail on opening day.
Oh, wow.
And I asked him, because when we got on the monorail, they told us we are just going back and forth from Ticket and Transportation to the Magic Kingdom, and they went by way of the Polynesian rather than go through the Contemporary. There was some sort of statement, I don't know the exact words, but basically, due to construction, we're not going through there. And the guy, Ted, who told me was, when they first opened early in that morning, they were on regular monorail mode, and shortly thereafter, he said they went into something called shuttle mode, which meant just back and forth.
Interesting. So they had one on each track, just back and forth, not doing a loop because of
right.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, there was no loop. And there's also been a lot of people have questioned me. I think this is where my son says, don't make any claims you can't support. But we said, as far as we knew, the Contemporary was not open. I since was contacted by a gentleman who was part of the staff there, and we communicated back and forth, and he said it was open, but basically to VIPs, sponsors, dignitaries, part of the Disney staff, but not to the general public.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Interesting.
Yeah, I think the general sort of perceived understanding is that by mid-October, when they did the grand opening, the floor 5 and floor 6 in the tower were open, but the rest of the hotel was still under construction. They were still getting stuff packed in. So
yeah, the gentleman who gave me that information also somewhere, I can't remember what website it was on, but he actually showed had some blueprints. He was on the construction crew, or somehow he got blueprints of the Contemporary, and they hadn't even slipped in the I guess the 14th floor was where all the major suites were, and he said they weren't even in place yet.
Wow.
Oh wow. So they barely got it open, if you can.
So they were still sliding in the chests of drawers.
The chests of
building.
Also told that the Polynesian it was open but not completely, and any overflow that was there was being sent to the Contemporary. Now this I can't confirm, but this is what somebody told me, and it sounded more accurate from what I saw versus what I read on the internet, and multiple places said all these places were open, and then I read another one that said, oh no, it wasn't open till November. I think that was the campgrounds. But
Right.
on the 25th, they had Jonathan Winters in the TV special. He was over at the campgrounds. Doesn't mean it was open, but
Jonathan Winters was there.
That's right. Yeah, we did in one of our previous episodes. We talked about how that opened later because it was kind of an I should say afterthought. It was like, oh well, yeah, we have to put this campground together, and they were a little late with it. So it's 10:30. You've entered the Magic Kingdom. That's for our listeners who aren't familiar. Back then, it was a simple cost to get in, and then you got for a few dollars, and then you received your tickets for the A through E tickets, depending on what attraction you were going on. So, what was the turnstiles like back then, and what were the crowds at 10:30 getting in?
Well, actually, when we went to Ticket and Transportation to buy our book of tickets, when we got off of the tram, some of the people who were in those little cages, booths, whatever you call it, they were waving their arms to let us know, hey, come over here, we're open. They were trying to solicit people to come up to the booths. There were some people just kind of milling around, probably didn't know what to do, but not many.
Now, how did tickets work that day? Like, you didn't give one at the gate, right?
Yeah, we bought a booklet of tickets, and it included an admission ticket. And then, I don't know, we had several E-tickets, D-tickets, and so forth.
If I'm not mistaken, they gave a monetary equivalency. They told us that basically an A-ticket was worth 10 cents, and the hot shot rides, the E-tickets, they were worth 90 cents.
Okay, and what did you guys buy, just one book each, or how'd you do that?
At the initial entry, and then I know we bought another book, and it was like they were only like, I'd have to go look at my notes, but I've still got the ticket books. It was like $3.75.
Oh wow!
That's
For
nice.
I think it was 8 attractions, or
Something like
because we went again in '74, and I think we got 11. You got a book with 11 admission and 11, and I think that was like 5 something, and that was 3 years later.
So for everybody who calls it an E-ticket attraction, we should just start calling 90-cent attractions, right?
Yeah, basically, I think they tried to come across with all of you people who are used to going to like the state fair or carnivals, and you would buy little individual tickets that were maybe worth 10 cents a piece or what have you, and it gave you an idea if you rode the big. I think back in the day, some of the ones that they would put together was like a wild mouse or something like that. Mm-hmm. That would cost you more than the kids merry-go-round.
Right.
When we went in through the turnstiles, right into the front of the Magic Kingdom, some of the photos I have show Disney characters. There was Winnie the Pooh and Eeyore and Goofy and Pluto. And they were just kind of walking around looking for people.
Definitely not many children at all.
Yeah, and one of your photos, you're standing in front of probably the photo that everybody takes, which is standing in front of the train station, in front of the flower bed. Mm-hmm. And you have a couple pictures here, and there's nobody upstairs on the train platform in all 3 shots. There's nobody standing next to you. There's just no one there.
One of the cast members, one of the young ladies that wore the little blue caps and the riding crop, yeah, she asked if she could take our picture, and we said, "Oh, please." And so that's how we got a picture, and there was absolutely nobody in sight. We didn't have to clear a path or wait until somebody, got out of the camera range.
That's still amazing, though, even if that was later in the day. It's like a ghost town, it looks like.
You're brand new. I noticed in one of the pictures you're outside the guest services. You've got the the one of the retro maps in your hand that we all love. What did you guys decide to do first? Obviously, you're new. The world's new to it. Where did you go first?
The train, so we could go around the park and kind of see what all was there. To get our bearings, that's the first thing we ride when we go into the Magic Kingdom for some strange reason.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys did a loop. Did you stop anywhere? Or did you just do a full loop and then get off back at Main Street?
Yes, we did the full loop.
Yeah, it didn't. There was no station over in well, I actually have a photo. They were still completing Pecos Bills.
Right. Yeah. The picture there, the outside, it's not completed. The pavement is super red, and it looks like it was just paved yesterday. There's maybe one person in the background. You went around through the Native American area, and
so there was no Frontierland train station yet. Is that correct?
It was built, but it wasn't open.
Okay.
I don't even know if it was built. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was there, but they weren't letting you off because there wasn't anything in Frontierland much.
Okay, but there was no stop. It was a complete loop.
Right.
So you really didn't have a choice. It boils down to. So I assume then you walked up Main Street USA from there and.
Yeah, just kind of, I mean, it was just sort of like, wow, I can't believe we're here. Just, I think the view down Main Street, looking at the castle. I mean, there's no other view like it in the world. Well, maybe there is. I have never been to Paris or Tokyo, but it is just really kind of you're just sort of standing there with your jaw dropped and go, wow. It was just really kind of cool. And, and standing there like there was so much to see with just all the little shops all the way down the street. There were just a lot of, and the aromas of candy and popcorn and, just sort of like an amusement park, but it even smelled better.
Yeah. And we'll just take a second to remind the listeners that when the park opened, the stores were actually all unique. It wasn't just Disney merchandise in every store. There was a lot of different stores going on. The tobacconist, the card shop, there's quite a bit of watch store. I mean, they were almost kind of independent and quite unique. So had you guys been to Disneyland before, or was this your first trip to a Disney theme park?
I had been to Disneyland back in the late 50s, I believe, maybe early 60s. And I was with my parents.
So having been to Disneyland before, what was kind of your first reaction when you saw the scope and the size of the Magic Kingdom here?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was like, it was a whole different world. The Disneyland seemed to have a lot of stuff close together. Very nice, but compact, well designed, and just the scope and size of the Magic Kingdom in Florida was just, that was something, it was just a little bit different. Walking just off of the hub from Main Street going over towards out in front of the Crystal Palace, I mean, it was just very, very nicely landscaped. The water was almost just totally clear. You could see they had a swan ride that was not operating, but you could see the tracks very, very clearly of where it was supposed to go.
So let's see. So you walked down Main Street. So did you eat something first, or did you go try to get on a ride?
We got a ride.
We did what?
We went on rides.
All right. Memory.
I see him in the cars. Like, what are those with the horses and that? Did you take one of those?
Sometime the horse-drawn.
Oh yeah, I've got a picture, a really good shot of a horse's rear end, and it wasn't me or anybody in particular. It was actually a horse, and we were sitting on there, and I think that only had maybe one or two people on it, and we rode that all the way down Main Street, and that was kind of unique because you could just kind of ride along very slowly and take in the sights. And I think that's pretty much what we did almost all day, just not being in any crowds. We weren't in any real rush, just looking at everything. And a lot of things we saw multiple times. We traveled around the park quite a bit. Just we didn't know that they were going to close when they did at 6, we, having been to Disneyland, I thought, well, maybe they'll be open late and have fireworks and all that, but they didn't.
Right. So it looks like after that, did you go into Adventureland after that?
Adventureland, yes, we did. I know I was fascinated with the steel drums that they had there, and their resonance just always kind of, as a musician, I just love different sounds and how you can make really beautiful music with something as simplistic as an old oil drum.
Right. And the photo that you've got of that too is that was before they moved over into Caribbean Plaza too. Before that was built, so it was over.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's an early shot of that the what's the name of the band?
JP and the Silver Stars.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
And they
they played there for years.
Right. They had a couple albums, one or two albums, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the way the sound worked from there. I don't know. It was a very good acoustic location that they had because it just kind of resonated through that whole plaza. It was really a lot of fun. It looks like, if you see my pictures, it looks like I was pretty well fascinated with the Jungle Cruise.
You got a couple of great shots.
Got a whole roll of film in there. I never met an elephant I didn't like, especially if it was animatronic.
Well, you captured something that a lot of people who like the old Disney World, retro Disney, we've had some film of it before, but we've never seen a really good still shot. And you did capture something. It's the frogs, and they were very, very short-lived there. They were on both sides of the boat. I think there was about 8 or 9 on each side. Brian, how long did they last for? They weren't there very long, right?
I think they were taken out in 1973. Is that correct, Hal?
It might have even been quick. It might have just been a matter of weeks before they were moved.
Yeah.
It was very fast.
I've heard people tell me that, and I never knew that. And I looked at my picture, and it was kind of blurry. I think at least one of the frogs actually was animatronic. I think it moved a little.
Yep. Yeah. I think a couple of them, right?
Yeah, we know the story is that Dick Nunis, who was the president of Disney World, thought they looked hokey and told them to take them out. But I don't remember I know it was quick, but I don't remember the time frame.
And
I'll tell you what, in my picture, one of the things that looks kind of hokey, and I thought it did live too, was I guess it was I don't know if it was supposed to be a python or whatever, the snake that was hanging in the tree.
Yeah.
The tree did not have a lot of foliage yet, and I think that made the snake look a little bit more unreal. Mm-hmm. I think the next, when we went back on the Jungle Cruise later, I kind of noticed that the snake was kind of camouflaged with some of the greenery, and it looked a little bit more, not necessarily frightening, but looked like it belonged there a little more than just like hanging on a bare branch.
Right. You've got some great shots of the original boats that were there and Trader Sam. And the African savanna scene, which now is so overgrown it doesn't look like a savanna anymore. It just looks like a jungle. But
George, you mentioned that you took an entire roll of film in the Jungle Cruise. How many rolls of film did you shoot that day?
The first roll of film I believe that I took was actual prints. And we just bought this little camera. An Olympus camera prior to our honeymoon. It was basically a 35 millimeter camera that was supposed to be as easy as an Instamatic or whatever, just kind of point and shoot. And my son has criticized I shouldn't have pointed and shot directly into the sun. Rolls of film, I would probably say there was 36 on a roll. And I have a total of probably about 170 maybe total images that are actual photos.
Wow. Did you guys go to the camera center at all, or did you just have all that like on hand? You were prepared?
No, I didn't. We went to the GAF photo store right across from the Emporium and bought prepaid mailers.
Oh, yeah.
And when I shot a roll of film, I put it in the mailer and dropped it in one of the little blue mailboxes that they had on several locations, especially around Main Street. I mean, I mailed those rolls of film right from Main Street. And they
Did it take a while to get to your house that it was on Main Street, or did it seem just normal?
It's if I'm not mistaken, they were waiting for us when we got home from our honeymoon.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
A couple of your shots have the mailboxes in it. Some of your Main Street shots, you can see the blue letter boxes. It's so hard to find any place to mail, let alone buy postcards or anything like that today.
Well, it was cool to me because I think I got a shot of the mailbox because at the time I was a letter carrier.
Okay.
Nice. Curious about their meals and what and where they might have eaten that day in the Magic Kingdom.
Okay, I believe one of the first things we had, and there was some debate in the family. I said I thought we had a hot dog and a Coke right in the corner place where the piano player on the bicycle piano.
Yes.
And by the way, I even had a communication from him. I mean, it seemed weird. 44 years later, almost, and that guy saw the picture, and he sends me a message off of their Facebook site saying that was me.
Is it that guy that still plays there today?
He still plays there today, a couple days a week.
Yeah, I've spoken to him and sat down with him and talked to him a couple of times when I was there, and that's awesome. Yeah, he's been playing there since day one. So if anybody of you have seen the piano player, and I don't know if you guys saw the photo of what he's playing on, I've never seen that before either. The piano is actually on a cart, right? It looks like they could pull him through the parade. Yeah.
There were like two wheels on it was an upright white piano. There were two wheels on it, and then he sat on a seat that was on a single wheel in the back. But when we saw him, he was stationary. He wasn't pedaling around.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I think they had those pianos on wheels at Disneyland, and they had it here for a while. But that piano is now stationary in the backside of Casey's Corner, and there's no wheels on it anymore.
Right.
Which is pretty sad, but that's a cool thing. Jim's the guy's name, right?
I believe. I think you're right. Now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
we have to have him on sometime.
Yeah. So
yeah, well, continuing with eating, we had a hot dog and a Coke there, and I think we may have gone into the candy shop. I think even at the time, every once in a while, they had little trays out with some free samples, and I mean, they were making one of the things that seemed like they were making a lot of was fudge, and you could smell chocolate all the way up and down Main Street. I mean, like I said, the fragrances there were really wonderful. And then in the I don't know what they called those. Halfway down Main Street, they were like almost like little alleyways or side streets, and one of them was just totally filled with fresh flowers.
We talk about that one all the time. People constantly stopped and took pictures there, and it's one of the things that I think a lot of people very fondly miss.
Finally decided to get something to eat later that day, and we went into the restaurant that is now Tony's. At the time, it was run by Hormel, and
the hospitality.
Yeah, Becky says it was a hospitality house, and we had a very nice meal there. It was very nice, a nice sit down meal, and I took a couple pictures inside. Once again, I was shooting from inside and getting bright Florida sun outside the windows. And one I thought was cool was like they had a stained glass window. Now, I'm not sure if that's there now or not.
I don't know if it's there, but I know that the picture you took is really cool of it. I remember looking at it and saying, wow, look at that.
Yeah, I was known for taking unusual photos. I never considered myself a photographer, but I always had, all of a sudden, I figured if you took a lot of pictures, you're bound to get a good one.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that you took as many pictures as you did of everything that you did, because the stuff that's in there's a lot of stuff that's just so fascinating to, us total nerds about what was, not only things that are there, but like things that aren't there. So I'm bless you for just shooting like a madman.
Exactly. It's beautiful.
Those weird angles that come across so differently.
Yeah, I think your stained glass picture was actually taken from the Veranda restaurant in Adventureland, based on the chairs and the garbage cans and stuff that are around it. But I will digress. Yeah,
it may have been. Wasn't that the Kikkoman?
Yep. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I had it for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't remember if we got anything there or not. I know we got some refreshment from the Florida Sunshine area. That was Florida Citrus Growers, I think, sponsored that.
Correct. Yes.
And I know we got something there. And one of the things that we really enjoyed, they did sell Cinderella's Punch at a little stand near the castle, and it was sort of a grape lemonade, and it was cold and very refreshing on a hot day. And after that, we never found it again, but they were still serving it in the banquet room, King Stephen's.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So you were there, and it eventually. Now you couldn't go through, as you mentioned earlier. Pecos Bills was under construction, and the Frontierland train station. So you had to go back out. And I'm just judging from your timeline photos and stuff that you then went ahead and looks like you went over to Frontierland and may have
got a picture of Becky standing there, and I said she was looking kind of tired. I said, well, we need to take a relaxed boat ride, so we went on the Mike Fink, and we actually, I believe, rode the Gully Whomper.
The Gully Whomper.
Yeah.
You have a good picture of the load of that.
Yeah.
The where they loaded the people onto it. It's a good shot.
And you have a very interesting photo too. There's a picture of the Admiral Joel Fowler, and we had Bill Cork on, who talked about how big the paddles were on the paddle wheel in the back. But what's interesting is that the nameplate is absent from the back of the ship. So that's a really interesting that was not even there on the first day. They didn't even have the boat. I don't know if it wasn't christened or if they just.
It was not running the first day.
They were painting it.
It was wet paint.
Really?
Painting the floor.
Really?
And there was another person that I spoke to from the Disney. We worked at Disney. He saw the picture of the refresh me. What was the restaurant there? The Liberty Tree.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And he said that their area chef, I think he said his name was Chef Akai, and he told this gentleman, his name is Steve, he started working there later in the 70s. He said, but the chef told him that on opening day they had to put people at the doorway because the paint around the doors there was still wet as well. And he said that my photo proved that.
Yeah, he's got a person standing two cast members standing out on the porch. I saw that conversation.
Exactly. I said it's about the same color of paint as the Joe Fowler riverboat. Maybe it was the same guys using the same paint, and it was a slow drying paint.
Now, speaking of the Skyway, some of the pictures you've got, you shot some fantastic angles. There's the picture I love the best is you're on the bucket and you took a shot directly towards the Fantasyland station. You see the Haunted Mansion in the distance, and then what would become where Big Thunder Mountain is. But I mean, you can really, really see how well the landscape of that area was designed, and until it all grew in a number of years ago, and then obviously, as we know, that area has been changed dramatically since then. But really, really plays well to seeing it from the air, and then a couple of your other shots. You've got Dumbo, how simplistic Dumbo looks, the very, very simple spinner ride. So yeah, some absolutely wonderful shots from the air.
Yeah, I mean you got a pretty good. I don't think that one was marked as a photo shot. Well, GAF had the film rights for the park at the time, but a lot of times I think after that they had places marked as with a Kodak sign, like a Kodak photo shot. I kind of remember that. I'm not sure where they had a little sign up letting you know this is a good place to take a picture.
That's right. You're absolutely right.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, and you mentioned Big Thunder Mountain. We have another first. We were in 1980.
Yeah, I was pregnant with
we were there in 1980, and we were eating at Pecos Bills and talking to some of the cast members and told them that we were there on opening day, and they kind of came over and told us, why don't you guys hang around a little bit? They had film crews there, and they were opening Big Thunder that day.
Wow.
And we weren't the first to ride on it, but we did, and they had it running a little slower because they had like a film camera mounted, or I don't know if it was a Disney product, but or possibly local TV, but they had one kind of like mounted up on the engine, looking back through the cars.
Right. So after your Skyway, it looks like you may have ended up in Fantasyland and then off to Tomorrowland. Now, was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea running? Did you happen to get on that?
It was not running.
It was not running. Wow.
No, I had a picture. They had a cast member there in the Captain Nemo type costume that they all wore, explaining what was going to be there and how it was going to operate and so on and so forth. But they were not. There was no boats. I think one of the shots that I had from the Skyway bucket shows 20,000 leagues, and from that shot, you don't see any of the submarines. So I don't know if they had an area back behind the waterfall in like a little cave there where they kept them, but there didn't seem to be any of them in the water that you could see.
Then when it looks like you went on the Speedway, which
yes, I did snap a picture. Evidently, I got off the car first, and I stopped just as Becky was walking after she got out of the little car, the vehicle, and she was walking up the little walkway there to exit. And I got a picture of her as she is exiting. So we did drive around there.
And you're one of the few people to drive it when it was at its longest, because it only lasted that specific size for, what was it, Hal, 3 years maybe?
Oh yeah, as soon as they started construction on Space Mountain, they chopped off part of it.
I've got a comment to our listeners on and I know JT, you said the same thing about the photos of the fountains out front of Tomorrowland. I mean, they're the gorgeous spires, the water's coming down. You have a fantastic photo, George, taken from around the castle, and there's two people standing on the bridge into Tomorrowland, silhouetted by the fountain, in the background and the water gushing down. It's just an awesome picture. But I mean, boy, times have changed. But that whole area is just beautiful. You captured it really well.
Oh, thank you. I thought they were just, at the time, I'm like, man, it was pretty futuristic looking to have kind of a fountain waterfall type effect. And so I tried to get pictures of water because Disney did have a lot of it running through the park.
Very clean too. That's the thing that gets me every time I look at these.
Was.
Now, what time was that about as you made your way through Tomorrowland? What time of the day are we now?
That was running towards probably after 5 o'clock.
Okay. And what time were they open?
That's an estimate, but I think we kind of worked our way around there and then back down Main Street.
Okay. Do you know what time they were supposed to close?
I read that they were supposed to close at 6, but we never even asked. And they did. They closed at 6. And then we were kind of told, some people said, they closed early because there just weren't very many people here.
Right.
But I've read since that was their plan at the outset.
Now, Brian, you did some research and got the actual attendance day figures for opening day, correct?
Yeah, Marty Sklar's book, he talks about how the Florida Chamber of Commerce was predicting to the press, and George has recounted to us the media coverage down there indicated the same, like, we're expecting 250,000, 500,000 people. There's going to be, the rapture is coming. And on opening day, they had 10,422 guests. So it was significantly less than they had anticipated, although Disney maintained that was just about what they expected. It's why they opened up on a weekday in October. Did not want school kids or anyone else there. They wanted to spend a few weeks because the official opening where Roy Disney was there and made his speech and all and dedicated the park was not for a couple of weeks.
Right.
Yep.
One thing though, I think I noticed, if there were 10,400 and some people there, they didn't stay all day.
Yeah. And so from there, you took the monorail back and the tram backwards and headed back to the car and back to Daytona that evening.
Right. I think Becky wrote in her book we were back in Daytona somewhere about 7:30. She kept just a small journal. We went back to Daytona and pretty much, I think we got a got a pizza like 9, 10 o'clock that night, and just kind of hung out in our room, and that was pretty much it. We didn't make plans to go back. We figured, we rode like the Haunted Mansion like 3 times, and there was never any wait at any of those times.
Wow. Yeah, you've got a picture of the queue, and it's just wide open.
So I'm looking at a list of what they said were the actual attractions open that day. So I'll just go down the list real quick, and you tell me whether or not you went on them. So Country Bear Jamboree.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Dumbo.
Yep.
Yep.
The Jungle Cruise.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mad Tea Party.
Yep.
Yep.
Peter Pan's Flight.
No, we didn't go on Peter Pan.
No, we didn't.
Okay. The Carousel.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Swiss Family. The
Yep.
Treehouse.
Yep.
Yep. Hall of Presidents.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Haunted Mansion, you already said. The
Yep.
Speedway, you already said. The train, you said. Tiki Room. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
It's a Small World.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So you pretty much did everything that you could do, with the exception of Peter Pan's Flight.
But they did Haunted Mansion 3 times, so we'll give them credit for a full day.
You know what? If I could do that day today, I would be so happy.
Yeah.
So George and Becky, I know you're going to be posting the photos. You originally put them up, and your pictures went crazy. Everybody started putting them together and taking a look at them. It was really exciting for you, and I know your son has been working on restoring them, cleaning up, cropping, and fixing color and adjusting it. And once you get those out there, we're going to let our listeners know, where you have them, so everybody can go peruse these pictures, take a look at them, and and see what we're talking about. But I really want to extend a thank you and for coming on board here tonight and sharing your story with us. It's been absolutely fantastic. JT, Hal, Brian, anything else to ask George and Becky? Or
I do have one last question. So first of all, I want to say happy anniversary coming up on October 1st, your 44th.
Yeah.
Thank you much.
And are you going back for your 45th anniversary on October 1st in 2016?
Probably not. We're taking our son, his wife, and our granddaughter, who will be 5. And I originally I retired, and I said, I'm on a fixed income and blah, blah, blah. And we originally made reservations over at like the Pop Century to save a buck, and my knees aren't very good. And I looked at all the walking, and I said, I ain't going to live forever, baby. So we booked the Polynesian, get closer to the loop, and we're going to go back in April, the end of April.
Excellent.
They want to go before he goes to school. Good Lord willing, and if we're in good enough health, we do want to go for our 50.
Cool.
Very nice.
All
Very
right.
nice.
Well, when you come down in April, get in contact with us, and sir, I will buy you a beverage of your choice at the Polynesian.
Okay.
Okay. I read on the website something about a lapu or something like that.
Oh yeah, that's a
the
good
goodie.
one.
How was the resident
Oh.
How was the resident master of tropical cocktails?
That's right.
Oh, good.
So George and Becky, I can't thank you enough for coming on. This is fantastic story of first day, your honeymoon there. Unbelievable photos that you've got. We'll make sure that everybody out there gets to be able to see them. But really, really thank you. Appreciate your time this evening talking with us.
Thank you very much, and it was fun. This was my first podcast. Didn't even know what they were about a week ago, but it was a whole heck of a lot of fun and great memories. So it's really kind of fun to talk about. Thank you guys a bunch. You all were very knowledgeable about what we were talking about. Even gave me some hints.
Great. We hope you'll come back and talk to us again sometime.
Yes, we'd
Okay,
like to hear
I'd
about
love
some of
to.
your later trips.
Yeah, we want to hear from 1980, and we've got some your early Epcot stuff. It'd be fantastic.
Okay.
Well, thank
That'll
you.
work for me. Bye-bye,
Thanks,
guys.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Have a great night. All right. Well, a big thank you to George and Becky Miranda for joining us tonight. Fantastic first day Magic Kingdom memories and photos and all sorts of great stuff there. So continuing on our theme for this month, first things first. Last month, when Hoot and How discussed the first family that was chosen on the first day of Disney MGM Studios opening, he indicated that the the family who was really first, who camped out, wasn't the one that actually received the first family treatment. Michael Eisner came around and pointed randomly to another family and essentially picked them out of the crowd, if you will. So we decided to go through some of the old archives and find out what happened with the first families at the other parks. Brian, you did some research on the Magic Kingdom, and there were some interesting things that happened.
So on opening day, as they were preparing to, let the press in and everybody, they picked a family from the crowd assembled there. It was the Windsor family, and it was a husband and wife and their 2 boys. And they were, given the lifetime silver pass to the Disney park, which would ultimately be applicable to all the Disney parks that they opened. And they were a photogenic family. In fact, the father was described as looking like Jack Nicklaus. He was being mistaken for Jack Nicklaus at the time, not Jack Nicholson, Jack Nicklaus the golfer. And they made a habit of coming to the parks frequently because they lived nearby. They became something of I don't want to say a problem, but legendary in that I recall seeing, I thought it was in Marty Sklar's book, and it was either Marty Sklar or Charlie Ridgway. I saw then maybe in one of our live appearances where they mentioned that this family became something of a pain in the butt over the years, constantly calling, saying that they were bringing friends from out of town in, saying that they wanted, extra special treatment here and there, years and years after opening day. In fact, there was a 1991 story in the Orlando Sentinel, the 20th anniversary of the park, noting that they still visited pretty regularly. So they certainly got their money's worth for that initial visit back in 1971. Became a little bit of an embarrassment, ran into some legal issues. The husband did in the late 80s. And of course, it makes the paper of, Disney's first family. It's this. So
don't forget about the worm farm scam in the late 70s too.
He was. You can read up on him.
We'll post the article. It's interesting.
We'll post the links. I don't want to slander anybody here. I'm sure they're lovely people. But as far as we know, they still live in the area. The family still lives in the area. But that was the Magic Kingdom's first family.
What I find interesting in the article, too, it says Bill Windsor admits these days that he and his family were not the first in line at the park on October 1st, 1971. 4 college boys were ahead of them. That wasn't you and how? That wasn't you and who, right?
No. In 1971, I was certainly not a college boy.
That's right. I just thought that was funny how it was college. So how you and I did some research on Epcot and uncovered some interesting things. Now, why don't you tell about the actual cherry-picked first family, and then I'll talk about the next one.
So let's fast forward to 1982, and this time it's the Kaysen family who lives in Winter Park who are selected as the first family. They also got the coveted Silver Pass. And they claim that they were able to get their pass by being there at 4:30 in the morning. I'm sorry, they're up at 4:30 in the morning, got there at 6 a.m., which sounds familiar. Sounds like our story a little bit. And then were chased away by security guards. Also very familiar with my experience. But eventually they kept driving in a loop and parking on shoulders. And then eventually they scooted in as soon as the parking lot opened, and they told the kids to run for the gates. So they did. And oddly enough, in the VIP section, watching this entire thing were the Windsor family. So the Windsor family actually got brought back for the opening of Epcot as well. But there was another first family, or at least someone who thought that they should be the first family. And Todd, I will hand it over to you for that interesting story.
So the Hall family of Melbourne claims that they were the first family at Epcot. And he actually took Disney to a lawsuit over this, stating that the night that Epcot opened, he hid in the woods for 2 hours in the late night, while the rest of the family, their two children, waited in the family car for the parking lot to open. I guess out on the street like you, Hal, waiting for that parking lot to open. And basically what he claims is that when he ordered an opening day ticket, the ticket agent instructed him that to be the first family, the instruction was to be here first. So he said, well, why not? So long story short, and again, we'll post articles on this too. They showed up and they weren't they weren't chosen. So he decided to take them to court afterwards. And he feels that they were baited. He says, you baited everybody. You don't find 4,000 cars waiting to be the first one in there unless people believe there will be a lifetime pass for the first family into the park. So he kind of had an idea of the silver ticket, silver pass we're talking about, and claims that we'll leave it up to the facts to speak for themselves. I have not found any additional information on whatever happened. I can only assume it was either settled or tossed out of court. So, but if the Hall family is out there and would like to tell us the other half of the story, would
tell us about your overnight stay in the woods.
Yeah, I mean it's eerily similar to how
I don't know why I didn't think about staying in the woods. It's so smart.
It makes sense. Total
sense.
I feel bad for the family out in the street. Yeah. So
that must have been a wonderful experience for the wife and children.
That's right.
My favorite part of that story is Charlie Ridgway, who was the PR director for Walt Disney World for the longest time. When the press said that the Hall family was suing Disney, and the circumstances of the suit, his response was, "Well, I look forward to that."
And you know what the suit was for, too? It says right here, he is asking the suit that his family be awarded a lifetime free pass. So, So if anybody has any follow-up information on the first families and any of this, feel free to send us an email. All right, now we're going to move on to another first that is then going to go into a discussion that many a listener have actually requested. So we're going to talk now about the first airport on property. Now, I know most of our listeners out there going, yeah, you're going to talk about the Stolport. Well, we're going to get there. But believe it or not, in the property that Disney purchased was actually already an airfield. And there's quite a bit of information on this on a website that we found, and we'll certainly post the link so that you can see it. You'll recognize a lot of the names if you're familiar with the roads around there. You'll see where Bronson comes from and other roads. But there was an air park, as it was called, Airlando, built in 1959. It just had a hangar and an office and a lounge. It was essentially a grass strip. And in fact, one of the people that recalls the airstrip being there, actually said that his father took flying lessons from the strip when it was there. It was in the actual purchase that the land purchase that Disney made, and it's certainly on the old aerial photography that we've had. We've been able to locate it, and it was there for a number of years. And if anybody's interested in the exact location, if anybody knows on Buena Vista Drive, where the Reedy Creek Fire Department is, that's fire station number 4. Just behind the Reedy Creek Fire Station is a running track, and that is a very far east end of where the runway was. It then went off to the west a bit, across into where Saratoga Springs and Disney used to be, all that good stuff. The northern side of that, and so there's actually still, from what we can tell, and from some of the older photos, there's a few buildings just north of the running track that were there back in the 1950s and 1960s. So for any of you out there who people say, oh, what was the first airport on Disney property, do not refer to it as the Stolport, because that's actually incorrect. So I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, who knows if anything was landed there when Disney was being built, if they used it for any scouting or it's kind of far off to the east of the property anyway. I have a feeling they just drove in. But so that's your answer. But that's going to bring us to one of Hal's expertise areas, the famed and much sought after information for is Stolport.
Yes, the Stolport was one of those great mysteries which, as time goes on, seems to be unraveling more and more. And we're getting really good information finally about it, which is fantastic, because when I first started going to Walt Disney World, it's like we were just casually aware that there was this airstrip sitting over there, but nobody knew exactly what it was used for, when it stopped. But today we actually have really, really good information about it, which is, I think, fantastic. So the fact of the matter was, so maybe we'll back up a little bit and maybe just talk about what air travel was like in Florida at the time and why there was a need for such a thing, and then kind of what happened to it. So in the early 60s, when Walt Disney World was starting to get built, you did not have Orlando International Airport. There was not a huge booming, ready to go airport. What you had was a Air Force base called McCoy, which was set up with big runways in order to fly B-52 planes in and out of it. So did have decent sized runways, but Orlando was not a huge mecca of travel by any stretch of the imagination. So there was a tiny little shared space for jets. So like Eastern Airlines has its first thing. There were a number of smaller airports like the Orlando Executive Airport, which still exists in Orlando, I believe. But there was nothing major. So when Disney came in, one of the things that they really wanted to do, or they thought they would need to do, is actually build like a full-sized jet port to handle all of this travel stuff. So in as we talked about in one of the earlier episodes, down on the South End property, there was kind of an indication that they're going to build what they called the airport of the future. And they started to get plans together for that. But my assumption is, like a lot of things that were going on, they were just taxed money-wise. I understand that they were trying to make deals with Eastern in order to get them to sign in. They were unsuccessful in doing that. So I think they just simply never got the money to build the full-fledged airport. And sort of simultaneously, the deals were being made with the Air Force Base to try to turn it into a civilian airport as well, which did start to finally happen in the early 70s. So little by little, there was a small terminal opened up for passengers on the other side, and then they could shuttle planes back and forth between that airport and the one at Disney, which is why the Stollport exists. So also happening in the 1960s at this time is this new concept of STOL aircraft, which is short takeoff and landing. NASA kind of pioneered the stuff in the mid 60s, and there was talk of putting these kinds of airports in all kinds of major cities like Chicago, New York City. There were even feasibility studies done to see if they could put these types of airports up on top of buildings in the city itself, since there wasn't a place. Not a lot of places that you could do stuff in the city itself, except for like LaGuardia. So there was a lot of exploration done. The first landing strip for that size was actually built at Logan International in Boston. And there was just a ton of work done around this. And there were a variety of aircraft that were developed that fell under the auspices of the Stoll business, so they could start developing things. When Walt Disney World decided to do something with an airport, a very small one, they went for the Stoll concept, and the airstrip that we know as it is today was built over by the Contemporary Hotel and the Ticket and Transportation Center. It's about 2,000 feet long, which is, I guess, very short. It's big enough that I suppose you could probably land a small aircraft on there, like a Cessna, but they were really not interested in doing any kind of private aircraft there. Really what they wanted to do was set up a commercial service. And there were 3 companies at the time that had the proper aircraft to do that.
And just to add, for those people who I've studied different things in aviation and know a lot about aircraft, but 2,000 is pretty short. Your average, everyday standard airport like Orlando International or any other your local airports are probably going to run anywhere from 7,000 upwards to 12,000 feet. So compare that to 2,000, and you're not going to get any type of jet service in there. As how mentioned, it's definitely for these specific type of aircraft using that very, very short space.
Yeah, so these are commuter planes that were intended to go here, what we call puddle jumpers. So and these types of planes are very common in northern cities. So like if you're in New York or Boston, there's a lot of these type of flights that go back and forth. As you get down to Florida, it's a little bit more rare. Which is interesting that there were actually 3 companies at the time that were doing that. There was what was considered to be at least hoped for to be a bustling business in doing these kind of commuter flights at the time. So there was Shawnee Airlines, Executive Airlines, and then a third called VQ. Shawnee got started actually in 1969. And they were at that time the premier sort of premier air carrier for these commuter flights. Oddly enough, they were they got started in 1968, and oddly enough, they were owned by the Root Company of Daytona Beach, Florida, who was the largest independent bottler of Coca-Cola at the time. So
you got free drinks in the air.
Yeah, so it was just this weird offshoot business that they had started, and I think at the time the business climate of Florida was hoping to be improving, and they were already doing a lot of these flights between like Orlando, Jacksonville, West Palm Beach, and this idea actually ended up killing all this not too long later, but at least there was a hope that there was a need for this type of service. So we'll focus tonight on Shawnee because they were the ones that actually managed to last the longest. Executive stuck it out for about 2 months, and then it folded. Shawnee managed to go a little bit longer, so they were probably the main carrier that you might have used had you gone through. So the planes that they used were very interesting. They were made by a company in Canada called de Havilland. The model number is a DHC6 Twin Otter 200. So it's a very specialized aircraft. It has a fixed landing gear, so they don't retract. They don't come in and out of the airplane. They actually are just stuck there the entire time. They held 19 passengers and then a pilot and a co-pilot. And oddly enough, these planes are actually still quite popular today. They ran through their production through the 80s, stopped production, and then another company ended up buying the rights, and they are producing these aircraft today with slightly more powerful engines.
It's interesting that you mentioned the 19-passenger capacity because while it does hold a pilot and co-pilot, I'm curious if they flew with them. And the reason is that the FAA does not require you to have a co-pilot for 19 or fewer passengers. So normally that's why those planes are attractive to regional airlines.
Gotcha. Well, you know what? I could be wrong about the co-pilot. I assume that, but you might have me there.
There is room for a there is a co-pilot seat. I was on one in Vegas about 5 years ago. It's the one where the door blew open in mid-flight, which is a great story sometime, but probably not for the podcast. But on the flight, you have the passengers in the back, and then there is a co-pilot seat. Now, one of our passengers sat in the co-pilot seat. But we just had the pilot. And then, of course, the door blew open mid-flight at 3,000 feet over the Las Vegas desert. And we had a passenger stood up and closed it in mid-flight. Sometime if you ever meet me, ask me to tell the story in more detail because it's one of those 10-minute stories I've told 100 times in my life. But very few people can top, yes, I was on a plane where the door blew open in mid-flight.
That's crazy.
Yes.
Well, apparently they're still very popular, particularly with skydiving companies. That seems to be who's the primary user of these planes now. And oddly enough, a lot of these planes, I think they started production in like 68. A lot of these planes from that era are actually still flying.
Yeah.
And they're still totally functional and still going strong.
And it's an overwing aircraft, so that's why it's probably preferred by sky jumpers because the wings are up at the top. So that there's nothing to get in the way of the jumpers. They just open the door and down they go.
Which is the plane that I was on. And the other reason is, because the wings are up for sightseeing, it's great because out the windows you just see down. I mean, there's no bad seat. You can see straight down to whatever it is they're flying you over. So,
yep.
Cool. Totally makes sense.
Yep.
So we have this 2,000-foot runway. It's marked as number 34. and there's not a lot else out there.
And just so another aviation buff thing, 34 is actually the compass heading of the direction. So that's 340 degrees. If it was 36, it would be due north. So that's 20 degrees to the west of north, and that's what all the numbers mean on airport runways.
Excellent. So they had basically 4 parking spaces. So as these 2 or 3 different companies would come in and out, there's basically a place for them to sort of like just set the plane off to the side while the next one takes off. I don't believe they had any kind of building for passengers for waiting. I assume a bus would come up and pick you up and then take you off to another hotel. There were plans that I've actually seen for a tiny airport, which may have been intended for there or may have been intended for the south property. I don't know, and it was quite some time since I've seen that, but I have actually seen plans for a very, very small terminal, like what you would see at an executive like Cessna-sized airport today. But that never really materialized. The production, or I should say, flight started to that airport on October 22nd of 1971 with 2 airlines, with Shawnee and Executive. And there's a couple of pictures floating around the internet with Mickey Mouse standing on the runway, sort of like leading the planes in from those 2 airlines. That was done for press purposes. If you wanted to, and here's one of those things where this must have been absolutely wonderful. So if your Eastern Jet landed at what would eventually become Orlando International, which was McCoy, you would take a 15-minute ride from that airport to the Stollport, and it would cost you all of $7 per person for that trip.
Wow.
And even in 1970, so that was 1972 money. If you adjust that for inflation, that's $39.96. So I would much rather take the 15-minute $40 plane ride from the airport to the airport than take a bus or a taxi, which costs way, way more than that. I think I looked at prices for like a sedan, and it's like $81 per person. So that was a great deal. There were numerous flights throughout the day, 9 or 10. There at some points there were direct flights to Walt Disney World from some of their other locations as well. So you could come in from like Jacksonville and other areas besides just the Orlando commuter route.
Right, but the executive stopped flying 6 weeks later.
Yep, very quickly.
So it was only Shawnee that was doing the regular flights, right?
Yeah, supposedly this third airline, VQ, went for a little while, and they used Piper Cherokee and Beach Bonanzas instead of the Otter. I haven't seen any good hard data about that yet. So,
which airline offered the best view of Roy's cabin?
Yeah, that would probably be Shawnee. That's actually, you would have probably gone right over Roy's cabin.
Yeah. As we were landing to the south,
is actually right by it. So.
Skimming the roof with the wheels.
That's right. We're gonna do a flyby to Roy.
We're gonna buzz the tower of Roy's cabin.
Yeah.
Maverick.
So this went for. So we started on October 22nd, 1971, and the very last, Shawnee was the holdout airline. So all of this ended on December 28th, 1972. So that was pretty fast. And really what happened was the entire sort of commuter airline service, that entire industry just kind of imploded in Florida. Besides doing these commuter routes, Shawnee and some of the other guys were also doing flights to the Bahamas. And as soon as air travel picked up in Florida, what happened is the big guys came in and started basically taking over a lot of these routes. And these were not big money makers. Shawnee eventually went into bankruptcy in 72. And when they reformed, they basically said that they had lost money from the day that they had started for the 3 years that they had operated. So it really wasn't anybody's fault. It was probably just a bad business plan to begin with. And if you look at $7 per person, I mean, potentially they were undercharging.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the entire thing, for as legendary as it is in the dorky Disney history community that we're in, I mean, the entire thing ran for 14 months. I mean, it started in October of 71 and the last flight was in December of 72. And then it never operated again. Now, we did read, we'll talk about what it's used for now, which is basically storage of construction vehicles and trailers and supply vehicles and things like that Disney parks in it today. But there was a story that we read during our research here that it was at least recently used in 2006 ahead of a visit to the area by President Bush, and a plane as part of the advance team landed there. They just moved the construction vehicles off. It landed, and then presumably took off. I mean, it wasn't the president, and it was ahead of his visit.
Air Force One just
it was not Air Force
dropped right there.
But presumably some kind of support vehicle. And a lot of times what they do ahead of a visit like that is figure out, if we have to get a plane in here, can we get a plane in here? That kind of stuff. So,
and that's actually interesting because besides your the whole industry kind of shutting down, it's like the construction of Epcot actually ended up being the thing that they say killed the airstrip. So with the monorail line now running to the north and to the south of that strip, that basically is in the direct line of a plane coming in. So if a plane were to either overshoot or undershoot the runway, you'd go right into the monorail.
Yeah, and if you're not sure where this is and you visit Disney World today, if you take the monorail between Epcot and the Ticket and Transportation Center, just as you curve off of the drive there to branch out towards Epcot, if you're looking down, you pass right by the Stolport. You can't miss it.
Yeah, if you're going down Vista Boulevard towards Fort Wilderness, you can look down it as well. So. Yeah, and the monorail really kind of paralleled it, so it must have only been from an emergency perspective. I don't know. I can't imagine it being too much of a concern.
So I mean that's supposedly when by 82 it was declassified off of the FAA routes. It was no longer an official thing. It still appeared on the maps, but it was basically you don't use this. It's gone.
Right. They put the big X's on it.
Yeah,
I remember seeing the X's from the monorail. You could look over the trees and you could see it there, and I remember seeing it.
Yeah, and I actually managed to track down some of the airplanes. So what was interesting is Shawnee actually leased those airplanes. They never bought them. So that was probably one of the reasons that it was easy for them to just kind of dispose of it after they went into bankruptcy. The one I tried to look for photographs of tail numbers. The FAA takes great pains to keep track of where all airplanes go. When they're bought and sold and leased and all that stuff. So that's good. So Shawnee leased 4 planes. The one that I could definitely identify in photographs by the tail number was N653DA. They leased that one from Houston Metro Airlines and returned it back to them in December 1972 after they shut down. That company eventually became Metroflight, and it continued to fly. And that plane was blown over in a tornado in Lawton, Oklahoma on April 1st of 1983. So that plane is dead. But some of the other ones that were flown are still being used. I found one in Germany being used for skydivers, and another one in France that's being used for skydivers. So the planes that flew at Walt Disney World are very likely still being used today. And if you managed to visit one of those places, you could actually fly in one. But you're not going to land.
At us if you have.
If you've ever been on any of those tail numbers,
double check your stubs.
So the legend of the Stolport basically lasts 14 months, and it becomes a giant parking lot plus, and becomes the stuff of legend.
Well, I do think we throw that out there here. If there is a listener who either directly or knows someone who ever took one of those, what were really only 3 or 4 minute flights between the McCoy Airport and the Stollport. Anybody who ever took one of those flights or one of the longer ones from a regional city, we would love to hear from somebody.
All the pilots had Mickey hands on.
I think of the convenience, though, right? The convenience of just landing and being whisked to your hotel in a matter of minutes, right? I mean, just
it beats the bus.
Yeah, forget the bus. Yeah,
yeah,
just fly me in.
And who wants to pay 50 cents to park?
I mean really, yeah, I'll pay the $7. Come on. Well, how now to celebrate this? We have some special things coming up, right? To kind of
yes, we certainly do
honor Stollport. So for our listeners out there, we are going to be working on some secret projects and some secret merchandise that will be coming out to honor Stollport and what we discussed tonight. So be on the lookout for those in the coming months.
Yes, we will tweet and Facebook and send out notices as soon as we're ready to reveal all.
Exactly. They're going to be good. All right. So with that, thank you, Hal. JT, what do we got in this month's listener mailbag? I think you got a special tweet out to you, right?
I did. It was a special dedication tweet directed at me. It made me feel warm and fuzzy and excited because it happened.
So to give some background, what you've been asking for something.
Two podcasts ago, I wanted a selfie of somebody rolling by the leftover pirate ship at the Discovery Island, and nobody sent a message, nobody said anything, and then finally, just what was that, like 2-3 days ago, was it? Yep. A guy sent us a selfie of himself that minute with the pirate ship in the background. And I actually heard somebody say it was gone recently, but it's not. It's
definitely
still there. And he's going to get a special prize. So that's my one big one for this week I got.
All right, well, it's time for this month's audio rewind. We had a lot of people wrote in this month, getting close to topping last month's incredible response. We had a lot of people write in with the correct answer. And so this month's winner was Joe Yost from Atlanta, Georgia. So congratulations, Joe. And we're going to set you up with, what do we got? We got a notebook, right?
I have from Redbubble a Hydrolator number 3 notebook from the Living Seas, going to be sent out to our winner. And got some stickers and a note card as well that's going to go to our winner. So thank you for submitting.
So I think this month's was a little on the easy side. I know a lot of people wrote in, knew it. The Horizon's End music is the answer from the Choose Your Own Ending portion of it. So we got another one for you as well. So we'll get to the instructions in a minute, but the idea here is take a listen to what we have and see if you can guess what it is.
Stand by to repel boarders! Repel boarders! Repel boarders!
All right, so if you think you know the answers to this month's audio rewind, send your best guess to podcast@Retro Disney World. And this month, the winner we're going to give away, I've got a, this is from the Fraser Creations. It's a Cinderella castle, stands about 3 inches tall with the tallest spire. It's a nice resin, ceramic type castle miniature, I guess you could say. It's got the moat and the bridge and everything. So we're going to give that away this month. So get all of your entries in by October 12th, 2015, and we'll pick one name from all the correct answers and give away the prize next month. For all those that enter, you'll be entered into the big prize drawing coming in December 2015, where we're giving away a replica Paul Hartley map from www.map.com. So once again, podcast@retrodisneyworld.com. Entries in by October 12th, 2015. So this month we're gonna skip over film restoration. We do have one that we had in mind, but we are running a bit late, so we'll bring that back next month. We're going to talk about a River Country film that we just restored, but also we need your help to continue to procure, transfer, and restore and distribute a couple of films. We've got some great 16 millimeter films, and we have a very tight budget to do those, and they're very, very expensive to restore. So we've set up an account at patreon.com, and essentially it allows you, the listener, to pledge to the project. And we also give rewards depending on how much you pledge. And we're almost halfway to we're over halfway to our goal of $1,000 to restore these two very special 16 millimeter films. So I do have to call out a thank you to those who are patrons this month and supported us. We have Brian, Matt Fussfield, John Cox, Frank S., Kurt, Jim, Trey Snyder, Carrie Meister, Kurt Shimala, Rob Hinkle, Jim Burmeister, and Daniel Wilson. So thanks to all of you for your pledge. For those that received one of your special gift for your pledge, we'll be getting those out to you shortly. Some of them, the coasters, entire Retro Disney World Epcot coaster sets, and you all receive early access to this podcast as well as the films that we do for the next year. So thank you very much. For those interested, if you'd like to support us, please visit retrodisneyworld.com/films. And if you can give anything from $1 to $5, we'd greatly appreciate it. And we'll get those films restored. So before we close out, we do have a new segment to our podcast. It's called Listener Memories. And essentially what we've set up is a phone number where you, the listener, can leave us a short, under 3-minute message with your memory. We want to hear anything you've got to say. The number is 978-71-RETRO. So if you give that a call, you can leave a message with us. And we did have a couple people who left us a message this month. And let's take a listen right now to the first one we received.
Hi, I'm Jason Bentley. My mom and I used to stay at the Contemporary every year when we would visit, and we watched them building Epcot from the top of the world every morning when we would go upstairs for the breakfast buffet. And remember the server at the top of the world having a rough time explaining exactly what was going on and what that big ball was over on the horizon. And she goes, well, it's going to be a new park, and it's going to be something different, but I really don't know how to explain it. And of course, the next year it opened up, and the rest was history.
All right, so that was our first memory there from Jason Kennelly. Appreciate him giving us a call and about watching the Epcot be built from the top of the Contemporary. So if you have a memory you'd like to call in and get on the air, give us a call at 978-71-RETRO. You can leave a message up to 3 minutes, and would love to hear from you, so give us a call. And Brian, you wanted to go over a little bit about RetroCon, right?
Yeah, JT and I were out there last weekend in Oaks, Pennsylvania, and it was a 2-day show. We showed off some stuff from your collection, some stuff from my collection. Lots of people stopped by the table. We had some people who are going to go home and try and dig out their 8mm films to send to us of their trips to Walt Disney World. But we did have a bunch of listeners stop by the table, and we wanted to thank Matthew Ellis, who had sent us an email the day before. Drove all the way in from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, with his family, stopped by the table, had a retro Mickey Mouse hat that his daughter was wearing. It was really a great thing for him to stop, and so we'll give a little shout out to him and everybody else who stopped by the table. One thing I took away from the weekend, we saw a lot of Epcot love. People who stopped by, people talked about some of the old attractions that they loved, but I had a Figment plush on the table, and even people who were not necessarily into the Disney World history, they all stopped and said, "Oh my God, look, it's Figment!" So it was great to see all that residual love people have for Figment from their trips in the 80s and 90s to the parks, and most of them said they don't have a ride there with him anymore, do they?
Wow.
I mean, the stormtrooper from Endor that has the weird helmet stopped and was like, "Check it out, it's Figment." He even recognized him. So
this was JT's first time encountering cosplay.
Yeah, it was really mind-boggling as they was taking it all in.
So that's the report from RetroCon. We did record a little snippet of JT and I, so maybe we'll play that somewhere in here.
Yeah. And Brian, we are going to plan to go next year, right? We'll plan to be there again.
I've said it. I'll do it as long as you guys are coming.
Yeah, we're gonna help. We're gonna help Brian out this year, next year rather.
I'm flying if we do this again.
Yeah, boys' weekend. How can come up?
Yeah,
it looks like a fun time.
We'll hang out in the city of brotherly love. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, with that, we're gonna wrap it up here. Appreciate all of our listeners as always. If you can give us a shout out at podcast@retrodisneyworld.com. We also have all of our unique merchandise for sale at retrodisneyworld.com/support us. Look for some new designs coming out. In fact, we do have a new series called Mesa Verde University Store is now open with notebooks and all sorts of other good stuff celebrating Horizons with some fan art. And our sponsors, well, Ticketmama.com for all your Orlando ticket area needs. Visit Ticketmama.com for less than gate prices. And by Rental Car Mama. When renting in Orlando, visit RentalCarMama.com for discounts at Advantage Rental Car and other firms. And also by OrlandoVacation.com, vacation homes and discount hotels for the savvy Florida traveler. Well, I thank WDWMap.com for sponsorship for the large prize at the end of the year. And if you're interested in sponsoring any portion of the Retro Disney World podcast, please email us at info@retrodisneyworld.com. Once again, thanks to all of our listeners. Keep the emails and phone calls coming. We love hearing from you. If you can give us a shout out, a review on iTunes, that would be fantastic. Let your family and friends know about us. And feel free to give us a shout out, Twitter, and all those good things, and especially our email address, podcast@retrodisneyworld.com. So, guys, anything else to say before we wrap it up?
Thanks to George and Becky Miranda.
With that, Brian, take us out.
Follow Todd McCartney and Retro Disney World on Twitter and Instagram @RetroWDW, on Facebook at Retro Disney World. And for all things Retro Disney World, including exclusive merchandise, visit us on the web at RetroDisneyWorld.com. On Twitter, follow our hosts, Hal Bowers @GoAwayGreen, for JT Cousier @Hoagie's Garage, and you can find me on Twitter and Facebook @Brian P. Miles. On behalf of our entire flight crew, thanks for soaring with us. To unfasten your seatbelt, just push down on the red button on your right. Be sure to gather all your carry-on items from the underseat compartment and exit to your right. Have a great stay here in Epcot or wherever your final destination may take you.